This is from the Whitecaps game, 10 minutes before halftime, as has been the case for the last 3 games. Whitecaps supporters walking out in protest of stories of harassment, alleged stories of harassment within the Whitecaps organization from years past. In the women's program specifically, we saw Timbers fans supporting Whitecaps fans. In fact, interestingly, I was reading a story in the Oregonian about what is happening in Vancouver in their support of your story. I'm joined by Ciara McCormack. She wrote a post on Facebook back in February, Ciara?
Yeah, end of February.
Talking about her story of harassment within the organization, the Whitecaps women's program, and this thing has blown up and really gathered some steam. Ciara, thanks so much for joining us, first off.
Thanks.
Can you talk to you posting the blog story and what, gave you the energy and the impetus at that time to press send and get this story out there?
I think it's been a story for the last few years that I've felt like needed to be shared, and I think there was a CBC article about abuse in sports a couple weeks before I posted the blog, and that was sort of the first time I saw it getting spoken about in media, and then I just felt compelled to write it one last time, and then I ended up running into a former player that I didn't know in a checkout line at the grocery store the day that I did it, and she had this coach and had told me she was in therapy, and that was sort of the impetus that I felt like it was a sign from the universe that I was supposed to hit post, and whatever was going to happen was supposed to happen. So that was kind of what took it over the edge.
And lots has happened, fortunately. Starting off with what the supporters groups have been doing, walking out at the last 3 games, did you think that this would develop in the way that it has?
No, I had no idea what to expect. I knew something big and significant could happen. I just didn't know what. The whole thing with the Southsiders kind of came out of left field at a time when really we sort of felt like we didn't have a voice and we weren't being listened to, and to sort of have them step up and people we didn't even know approach us and ask us how they could help us was a pretty...
So they contacted you before suggesting this idea?
Yeah, they just reached out to us, and they just said, how would they be able to support the whole thing, and what could they do to be a part of it. Curva, another supporters group, had written a letter a couple weeks before in support of the whole situation. So, they asked us to meet. We sat down with them. They suggested the walkout idea, and it asked us if we would be okay with it. And then, obviously, it's kind of gone ahead and picked up some steam.
And the Southsiders, most specifically, has been very vocal about their at least belief in the response from the team, how it has been non-existent and then maybe a little bit underwhelming. What's your take?
Yeah, I think it has been both of those things. I think it's been disappointing, but obviously as things have unfolded over the last, since it happened all the way to now, it's kind of not surprising. But I think at the same time, you're just kind of hoping from the human aspect that, you'd actually have, if the owners are going to sit down with the Southsiders, that the owners would also sit down with us and apologize. So yeah, it hasn't happened. And
you have not heard from the team at all?
No, we haven't.
What would you like to see? What would you like to see the Whitecaps organization not just do in response to you specifically, but to fix what's happening or has happened in the past within the organization and within sports in general?
Well, I think there's 2 parts to that. I think the first in this specific situation would be, I think we all just want some transparency and accountability for what happened in 2008, and just to have an investigation, and not an investigation run by them, but, a pure, true, third-party investigation. That would be the first thing. And then I think the overall, it also, obviously the Whitecaps have gotten a lot of heat because of the Southsiders and the local aspect to it, but it is a Canadian Soccer Association situation as well. And so, we would just like to know, as people that went through the whole situation that were really impacted by it, what exactly happened in 2008, and just some accountability, an apology.
How has this changed your life in the last couple of months?
It's been a full-time job, there's just been so many moving pieces to the whole thing. So, we've done tons of research, and obviously the whole safe sport aspect of it, and changing the structures, and just, it really, I feel like it's been a university degree in safe sport and abuse in sport, and just structurally learning the things that need to change. So
soccer's been your life since you were young. Obviously, you went to university, played professionally all over the world. Did you at any time think that soccer will continue to be your life, but then have this secondary component that started off in a way in a negative, but you've turned it into such a positive?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you go through something and when you're an athlete, you're sort of such in a bubble, and I don't think you actually... You know, it's been interesting for me even since posting the blog, because I think I've really noticed sort of how much it did impact me. And I think a lot of times, you know, when we talk about abuse, you know, you think like full-blown sexual abuse, but there's a lot of abuse and harassment, and neglect is another word that I've learned, like when you step up and you get like penalized for it, and that happened throughout my career. And so there's, yeah, it had a negative impact, but it is really nice to see, obviously now taking the thing that happened that was obviously a negative, and now seeing it turn into such a positive, and seeing groups like the Southsiders and the Timbers, and you know how they've really turned it into a positive as well. And I think it's hopefully gaining momentum regardless of how the organizations choose to handle it, that we can turn it into a positive and use it as like a lightning rod moment to really, you know, pay attention and put a spotlight on this whole safety in sport thing, because you know young athletes deserve the chance to pursue their dreams in an environment that protects their health and well-being.
Well, thank you so much for being that lightning rod and for shining the light on this issue.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for joining us. Now let's throw it over to